Look at all the things here that can go haywire. And again, let's go through it. Your grip, your launch angle, the attitude of the dice, the release, the velocity, the number of rotations, the angle which it comes down and lands again, where it lands, if it lands flat or not to reduce the energy, the angle it hits the wall at, what direction they're moving in. We talked yesterday about reducing variables to create variance with dice influence, and I want to dive into this again because after I talked about it yesterday, I got to thinking about it last night. Like, oh my gosh, the amount of variables that there are enormous. So I want to actually go back to my table again, and I want to bring the big fuzzy dice out and let's look at the variables and all of what they actually are because there's so damn many of them. And I want you, if you're on the side that says dice control is possible, look at what I'm about to show you. And there's more variables than I'm even showing you here of things that can go wrong or whatever. If you're on the side that says that's not possible, well, here's your confirmation bias. Okay, so I'm going to either confirm your bias or I'm going to scare the crap out of the influencers. But I want you all to see the number of variables that there actually are and all the things you got to get right. And how many of those things can we actually accomplish as people? Where does the person come into this and where does the person leave the equation, I think is an important thing. So of all the things that can vary, right, the simplest thing to look at really is the first step. And gripping the dice, and I'm not going to give you a lesson here, but I'm going to show you some of the differences in grip. You can grip the dice with 2 fingers, and you look at my hands here with a 2-fingered grip. You can grip it with 3 fingers. You can grip it with, some people do a 2-fingered grip where their thumbs in the back and they can kind of split them or not with their front fingers. All those grips change the flight of the dice, right? They change how you release them. Some people like me stack them and grip them here, like over the top. I can't really show it with the dice too big. Some folks grip them like I do. When I do the par toss, I actually grip the points. I'll grab, these dice are so enormous. I grab the points like this instead of the face. All that to say, right? And the random thrower just grabs them and just, does the thing. All that to say, the grip is the first variable, right? And again, if you think about a purely random throw, a true random throw, there's no set made, there's no grip cared about, there's no anything, everything is random. What I'm going to show you here is all the things that you can do or that you're trying to do as a dice influencer to reduce the number of variables that there are. So one is going to be that grip. I haven't even talked about the set. To me, the set is important, but it's not like the only thing, but it's a deal. The second thing I want to talk about is the launch angle. So when you're throwing these things, there's going to be this launch angle. So in other words, at what point coming from here to here, are you releasing the dice low, high? Like at what angle do you let them launch at and what angle will they travel? Because that's going to really determine the angle at which they land. Combining launch angle with launch attitude, what I mean by the attitude is, again, it's not just the angle because I could keep these things parallel and launch high or low, but I'm also twisting and changing the attitude of the dice as I go. So there's launch angle and launch attitude. The type of release that you do is different, right? Me with the chopper toss, I'm releasing here and I flick my fingers to impart spin. Some people will stack them and throw them and have no spin. Some people will throw them ahead with no spin, knuckleball. Some people will spin these things really fast, trying to get more rotation. Some people spin them super slow, 1 rotation all the way through. The amount of spin you put on the dice with your release, right, determines the number of rotations that your dice get in the air. And based on your velocity, again, the dice are traveling one way. They may be spinning backwards. They may be spinning forwards. They may be spinning sideways. But your number of rotations coupled with the velocity and that launch angle all determine the amount of energy they're carrying into the second piece. Okay, that's just getting them in the air, right? And your second piece, which is your landing zone. Where are they going to land on the table? Now here, I'm not showing you the whole table because it's a small screen, but where are they landing? Are they landing, let's pretend that my little pop up there is the back wall. Are they landing right at the back wall, at the very, very base? Are they landing here? So they have some kind of bounce into the wall. Your landing zone matters big time because it determines when the dice hit the back wall and where they hit the back wall. Because again, if they land far out, you're likely to hit the back wall a little bit higher because they're going to be up in the air. If they're closer to the back wall, the likelihood of them being high is lessened because they're going to hit and impact quicker, won't get as much height on that second bounce, but that matters. Right? Where they hit on the table and relative to the back wall is important. Also, I say the angle to the wall. If they hit the back wall square or hit the back wall cockeyed like that, where one die hits first, well, what happens? That die hits first, it comes off, they kiss, sends this die here off to the side. Those things matter. The angle that it hits the back wall at matters as much as how close to the back wall. Those are two factors that a lot of folks don't think about. And not just the angle of the dice, but if they're traveling, let's say they're traveling straight, but they're angled versus traveling straight into the angle. Two different ways of hitting the back wall, right? Hitting straight with the dice cockeyed or hitting in a diagonal motion, where they hit the back wall impacts how they bounce off the diamonds. And again, you can either plan for that or get lucky with that. The other thing on the back wall too is what faces are up when they hit the back wall. Can you know that? If you're throwing a hard way set, can you know for sure that they have rotated backwards 3 times in the air and the 4s are up when the back wall gets impacted? Can you guarantee that when they hit with those dice up, with those faces up, or are they going to hit in reverse direction or whatever? Knowing what faces are up when the back wall impact happens determines, again, your expectation of what's going to happen after the back wall. And most of you, I would say 99.9% of you cannot ever say that. This is the first variable I think you lose control over. I think you can control your grip. You can control your launch angle, the velocity, the attitude. You can control all that. You can control where they land for the most part. You can control how close to the back wall they hit. You can control the direction, like this, square or non-square. You have control over all that stuff to this point. Now, though, you have a problem. Okay, the first thing that you lose control over, I think, is the flat landing. We'll talk about that in a second. Do they land flat or not? And then which faces are up at impact? Those two things are out of your control. You can control the speed, height, angles, all that stuff. You cannot control, I don't think, with a regular standard toss, which faces are up when they hit the wall. That's going to be a tough one. Now, for me, with the chopper style toss, the helicopter toss, I have control over that. I'm still in control here because I know when they hit, they skip into the wall. And I can tell you for sure that in this case, the 2s would be the ones that are hitting the wall up. I know they're going to land flat. I know they're going to hit the wall with those things up. But after that point, it's in God's hands. And I think that's the piece that this is at the point at which folks who are on the side that says dice control is not possible, this is where they start going, here, this is it. You have all that. I'll give you all that. You're a human. You can do amazing things like all humans can, but you're about to lose control of the whole thing. You can control all that stuff until we hit the table. And once we hit the table, we have this problem, right? You can control it to here, but then you've got the first thing is the rebound velocity, which is like, how hard off the table do they come back? When it hits the table and they whack off again, how hard is that hit? You really can't control that. You can control a lot of it, but if they land super flat, all the energy gets dissipated and they hit the wall very softly. If they hit on an edge like this, or God forbid like that on a point, right? They lose no energy. They hit the wall super fast and your rebound velocity is almost impossible to control, right? Do they come off the wall square? Do they hit the wall and come right back off and roll over nice and neat like this? Or do they hit the wall and start spinning and gyrating crazy town? That slow motion shows you a lot of this. And you watch slow motion, you see back wall hit and then you see all this crap in here. You've lost it completely. Okay. Now that can be mitigated by speed, by energy. If they hit flat, hit the wall, and they do this one time, you've mitigated the amount of that. You could probably make the argument that you've done something to reduce the amount of randomness in your shot. Okay. But off the back wall, you'd like for them to land flat again. I want them to hit the back wall and land flat again, taking the rest of the energy out, because that final energy that come to rest phase can be ugly or it can be really pretty. But again, from the impact is where your ability as a human being to control these guys goes away. So you can get them, and I said this last night in my show, you can set them up for success. I can set them up so they land where I want them to at the speed and the angle that I want. I've set them up to do the best possible job they can. But after it hits that wall, right, you can only hope that you've done enough good, because again, the diamonds are shaped in that way to impart that weird side spin to them, right? Our job is to eliminate the side spin. Lots of ways to do that. We'll talk more about that in future episodes and future discussions about this topic, but I want to point this out. It's so important to know all the things that can go wrong. And again, that's not even all the things. I haven't even talked about dice sets yet. I haven't talked about implosions, that all the things that can go bad. Joe's doing a good job of that. George from CY does a great job of that. But look at all the things here that can go haywire. And again, let's go through it. Your grip, your launch angle, the attitude of the dice, the release, the velocity, the number of rotations, the angle which it comes down and lands again, where it lands, if it lands flat or not to reduce the energy, the angle it hits the wall at, what direction they're moving in, which active faces are there at the wall impact, where on the diamonds do you hit, the bottom side of a diamond, the front of a diamond, the side of a diamond, all those things matter in terms of what happens to the dice after that hit. This impact right here, this bullet point down here, the fourth one down, is where it starts to go sideways. You can control certain things, but here you lose it. And again, how hard off the wall? Were they square? Do they land flat a second time? And how long before you release all the energy? All that has to be perfect to be a controlled shooter or have control over the dice. And that's why I think people who will tell you this is impossible, that's where they lean into it. That is impossible to control. Once they hit the wall, you can't control anything. So there's truth in that. But what we say on the other side of that is you've got to get to the point where you can control what you can control and set them up for some kind of success. All right, that's what I have to say about dice control today. So I wanted to give some more visuals and details about that because I think it's important for us to get in it. All right.